Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of Prehistoric Planet Ice Age. For our breakdown series, this is Grasslands. Now this episode has a few great sequences that really showed off the best of the CGI that has ever been shown in Prehistoric Planet. I think it's really just showing like how far the CGI of this show has come, because there are some great animals in this episode that have been brought to life in such a real way that you'll see when we get into it that there are some animals that just look very real that it's almost scary. But yeah, let's get into the episode, because I think this one is probably my second favourite. Although, to be fair, all the episodes are fairly great on their own. They cover some great concepts, some great animals. So yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have a least favorite, because well, they're all pretty great. So yeah, let's get into it. We kick this episode off with the giant rhino Elasmotherium on the Eurasian steppe, a species that has undergone some recent design changes regarding the horn, which was previously depicted as being a much longer ornamentation, but is now believed to be a much shorter sort of boss shape, so, sort of like a Pachyrhinosaurus, a ceratopsian from the late Cretaceous. But perhaps it's a more powerful weapon than that long, about I think 2 meter horn that it was being depicted with, for this animal to be able to use against rivals, because a long weapon's not exactly always going to be the most effective weapon. A blunt one can actually be much more deadly than a sharp one. And so, yeah, Elasmotherium with a shorter horn would still be a very effective defensive animal. She is grazing on the various grasses and flowers of the steppe, and we get this great wide shot showing her size in comparison to her landscape, as Elasmotherium was about as large as an Asian elephant compared to modern rhino species like the Indian rhinoceros or white rhino, which are actually a bit of a significant downsize compared to Elasmotherium. In the opening montage, we see the heaviest flying bird in Africa, the Kori bustard, with a southern carmine bee-eater riding on its back, using the bustard's size as a way to stir up insects from the grass. And a similar depiction that has been seen in previous Ice Age documentaries, we see a herd of mammoths in amongst a herd of bison. But this is something that actually occurred, and it's always great to see how well the CGI animals in this show can blend with the real animal footage. I think it just blends so much better than any documentary that's done this previously, where there's been CGI animals alongside real ones. Back with the Elasmotherium, ticks are an unfortunate side effect of the expanding grasslands, and our female here has more than them to worry about. A flock of ravens arrive, an animal that eats ticks, but they're more interested in using her thick fur as nest material. So to be rid of the ticks and pesky ravens, she visits a thermal spring oozing with warm mud. She's not the only female here though, as she encounters another already bathed in mud. The two share one of the pools, and our female rolls into the mud, soaking her fur with it, and this should kill the ticks that are in there. I have to commend the artist that worked on this scene, as covering an animal in thick fur that moves almost independently with mud must have been a challenge. And so, very well done to you guys, this was really well done. We then move on to Africa, where we see ostriches and another carmine bee-eater using this larger bird for a similar purpose to the bustard. It is here that we encounter Homotherium once again in the series, feeding here on a gravy zebra, an endangered species today, but also the largest of the wild equines. I mentioned this with the Smilodon in the New Lands episode, but we see Homotherium chewing with its cheek teeth, the carnassials, to bite through the tough meat of the zebra and so not damaging its sabers. But out of the dry grass, a clan of giant terrestrial otters known as Anhydriodon come to steal the kill from the cats. These animals roam particularly the grasslands of the Horn of Africa in places such as Ethiopia and Kenya, and they were formidable predators, about as effective on land as modern giant river otters are in the water. The two factions clash in a brutal fight, but the cats are greatly outnumbered and outmatched by these supersized mustelids, and so the cats are forced to retreat. The family of otters call in their cubs to share the meal, and you can just see how these huge otters have evolved to be terrestrial and are able to sort of upset the balance, or at least what is considered the natural balance of grassland ecosystems, where cats or canines are supposed to be the top predators, but here otters were able to take pride of place. Moving on to the forests of Central Asia, we see various creatures alongside our giant protagonist. We see a black giant squirrel on a branch, as well as two species of monkey, a young rhesus macaque and this, the spectacled langur. But here we are to marvel at Gigantopithecus, the largest ape known to ever evolve, and I'd just like to say that I think the CGI peaked in this scene. The animal was so real that I felt like I was watching an ape like a gorilla or an orangutan that has been actively filmed in the wild. It's that good. It is just so convincing that, yeah, it's probably one of my favourite animals in the series just because of how well it was brought to life. In particular, this shot of the Gigantopithecus admiring the butterfly. I just see the face of an orangutan here, and it is so well proportioned and modelled that, yeah, the detail is just insane. You can see all the smaller hairs, even around the lips, there's lots of little hairs there. You have all the wrinkles in the skin, the eyes are perfect, and yeah, just overall, a magnificent job. But the reason Gigantopithecus is in this episode is because of how the expansion of grasslands is affecting his species' survival, with less and less fruiting trees being around to sustain this huge primate. We get a ground level shot of the Gigantopithecus here as he wanders across a forest clearing with the mountains and sky behind him, really evoking a very King Kong vibe. And I'd like to say that the score accompanying this scene was really cool as well, so congrats to the composers for really bringing this scene to life, and I think it is probably my favourite scene in the whole series because, yeah, it's just so immersive and very cool to watch. We see him perform a lot of ape behaviours, such as scratching his eye. I've seen many apes in documentaries before, and I've been lucky enough to see a couple of apes in life, and it's just great to see a lot of these behaviours being applied to the Gigantopithecus here, using behaviours from a variety of different apes, as we'll see a little bit later, and just incorporating them into this one animal. One of those being biting into the tree to strip bark from it, something that many great apes, particularly orangutans, do today. And this bark in particular carries valuable vitamins and minerals that he needs to survive. And this shot, I didn't intend to get this particular shot, I was just trying to get him with the bark, but this shot I feel like could be turned into a meme, like he's just looking at maybe some message on the bark. I don't know, I just thought this shot in particular sort of gave me Shrek vibes in a way, but let me know what you think. Like, this shot just did look a bit funny to me. He also fishes for ants using initially his fingers, but when they bite he fashions a tool from this stick, something that many apes do today. So they'll grab a stick and shape it into a particular tool that they need for a given situation. So chimpanzees, they will grab a stick and fashion it in a way as to whether they need it to be maybe a spear, or they need it to be a tool for whittling out termites in a mound, or using what the Gigantopithecus does and performs the behaviour known as ant dipping, where animals like orangutans have been observed using this technique to capture more ants at a time. And he seems to enjoy the protein, lots of it for less effort. He also comes down to a stream to drink, and this is exactly how I've seen apes drink from a water body. When I've been to a zoo with chimpanzees or gorillas, they'll get down on all fours and just lean down and drink from the water. Sometimes they will just cup the water with their hands and just drink it like that, but they will also just drink it like this. But food is not the only thing on his mind. He calls out, searching for a response from a potential mate, but there is no answer. A couple of largibbons, though, do respond. In the trees above, they are able to search the forest much faster than he is. He follows them to a fruiting myrtle tree, but he's too heavy to climb this tree, and so tries using his brute strength to shake the fruit from the branches. An oriental pied hornbill is also seen here. I believe it's one of the most commonly sighted hornbill species in Asia today. At least that's what I found out on iNaturalist. When brute strength doesn't work, he displays some upright locomotion to drag a large stick to the tree. So this was a sort of common belief for a while that Gigantopithecus was bipedal, just walking around much like humans do, which is possible, and great apes today are capable of walking on their hind limbs fairly well. But it's believed, given his great bulk and size, it's somewhat more feasible to believe that he would walk on all fours most of the time, so in a quadrupedal manner. But he could certainly walk on two legs if he so had to, such as here, dragging this large stick to a tree. And like a kid trying to open a piñata, he uses the stick to smash the fruit from the trees. The fruit falls and he can enjoy his reward. We even see him initially grab an unripe fruit and he just spits it out. That is something that apes do as well. Like they test the fruit to see if it's ripe to eat and spit it out if it's not. And then he enjoys the ripe ones. This story, though, unfortunately doesn't have a happy ending for him, getting both food and a mate, as he doesn't get the female that he was looking for, as it depicts the plight of his species, with our male being one of the last of his kind as the grasslands continue to shrink his forest home. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't really think about the Ice Age, is that the climate change was really one of the main killing factors for a lot of these incredible species. Humans, even though it's thought that they killed quite a lot of animals and very much could have, it's more so the climate that brought about the extinction for a lot of these animals. Gigantopithecus needed more forest with more fruiting trees, but as that forest disappeared, they also disappeared. The Enhybridon, the giant otters, they would have lost the environment that they were really thriving in, where there probably would have been a few more rivers in Africa than there are today, and so the otters can go between them, but also could have been outcompeted by other more fearsome animals like the lions that hunt in prides, or hyenas that just swarm in clans of up to 60 animals or more. Stuff like that is really the main killing factors for a lot of the species. And like the terror birds we saw in New Lands, they were doing just fine before the Smilodon arrived. Smilodon and Arctotherium, the giant short-faced bear, they outcompeted the terror birds, and so the terror birds were not able to fill the niche, as that niche was slowly being taken over by those animals. And yeah, I think that's just a really interesting concept that this series was able to explore, because we don't see humans a lot in this series. We do see them, like we'll see them in the big melt just very briefly, but yeah, we don't see a lot of humans, as it really wasn't the humans that, like the rise of Homo sapiens, that brought about the extinction of a lot of these animals. We return once again to South America with the familiar Macrauchenia, and our protagonist, the Dedicurus, a giant armadillo like Glyptotherium, but instead of a short armoured tail, this male wields a mighty club tipped with spikes, a weapon the local Smilodon is willing to avoid. Our male Dedicurus is searching for a mate, sniffing dung piles left by his quarry. When he finds a female, she isn't alone, and an older rival male is already courting her. The two giants clash, using their shells as battering rams and their clubs as mighty medieval maces. Their powerful hind legs are what is able to give them optimum swing, creating potential energy and then swinging it directly into their opponent. Our young male lodges one of his spikes straight through one of his rival's osteoderms, and to finish the fight, he proceeds to tip him over onto his back. And yeah, I don't think that male's going to be getting up for a little while. But despite his efforts, the female is not interested, showing that winning a fight does not always get the girl. Our last segment follows a herd of woolly mammoths once again. Their tundra home has become dry in a severe drought, and they are struggling to find water. The matriarch uses her sensitive padding on the soles of her feet to try and listen for any weather changes in the distance, a technique seen in modern elephants, as they are capable of detecting such phenomena, and so it's reasonable to suggest that mammoths were capable of doing the same thing. She can hear a distant storm, and so she and her herd set off in search of it, following the sound of the distant rains. But to reach it, they have to first survive an unexpected dust storm, with particularly large ones having been created at this time, due to the massive glaciers crushing up stone and adding more dust to the earth than ever before. The wind and sand is brutal, but the mammoth's thick fur protects them from the worst of it. They close their eyes and tuck their nostrils into their trunks to prevent them from breathing in the dust. However, the small calf has not yet learned this technique, and is slowly suffocating. When the storm clears, The calf is asphyxiated by the storm, being almost unconscious. Her mother stays by her side until she has the strength to stand once again. And then, as if by a mythic stroke of luck, the rains arrive right on top of the pair. As they rejoin their herd, the streams are now full of water, creating pools and ponds where the animals are able to quench their thirst and play. And we end this episode with the largest gathering of mammoths that I think I have ever seen in a documentary. Probably not since the likes of Prehistoric Park or Walking with Beasts, with thousands of animals all gathering to reap the rewards of the end of their long drought. And that was Grasslands, another really great episode with some fantastic animals shown off, easily some of the best CGI in the whole of Prehistoric Planet, with the hair of various animals reacting against plants, mud, dust and rain, all really incredible work by the CGI team at Framestore. But what did you think of this episode? Did you enjoy it? What was your favourite animal in the episode or your favourite sequence? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you for the final episode, The Big Melt.